Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. Unshaved, unbathed, unedited, and unscripted. I've been having some interesting discussions of late with liberals, so called liberals, on the other side of the pond. And it's been making me think more and more carefully about what a liberal is and what a conservative is, what a Democrat is and what a Republican is. I'd like to start with an idea from the American Revolution and how Republicans thought at that time. The colonial intellectual and political leaders in the 1760s and 1770s closely read history to compare governments and their effectiveness of rule, which is a lot like what we've been doing lately in political discussions on Facebook, on Twitter, on Reddit, etc. The revolutionists were especially concerned with the history of liberty in England and were primarily influenced by the Country Party, which opposed the Court Party that held power. It's interesting in my Facebook discussions with this group right here, which this morning kicked me out, British and American Politics. At least they didn't ban me. I can still see the group. I'd urge you all to go to this group if you get a chance. In my discussions in this group, I've been thinking about, well, what does the Country Party of the past in the 1700s think of the Court Party currently? And things have gotten all mixed up in the over 200 years since that time. The Country Party of that time shared some of the political philosophy of Whiggism, as well as Tory critics in England, which roundly denounced the corruption surrounding the Court Party in London, centering on the royal court. This approach produced a political ideology Americans called republicanism. So our thoughts came from the Country Party in England. And this was widespread in colonial America by 1775. Republicanism was the distinctive political consciousness of the entire revolutionary generation. American republicanism was centered on limiting corruption and greed. Virtue was of the utmost importance for citizens and representatives. Revolutionaries took a lesson from ancient Rome. They knew it was necessary to avoid the luxury that had destroyed the empire. A virtuous citizen was one who ignored monetary compensation and made a commitment to resist and eradicate corruption. Now, today's liberals spend a lot of time pointing fingers at Republicans and saying that they're the party of corruption. And I went through the last probably 30 years thinking that, and I have come to a different conclusion lately. I'm beginning to think that the Democrats are just a stealthier version of the corruption that has evolved in the Republican Party. Are the Republicans currently concerned with purity in terms of resisting corruption? Not so much. But are the Democrats interested in the purity of resisting corruption? Also not so much. So what actually caused the American Revolution? The commitment of patriots to Republican values was a key intellectual foundation of the American Revolution. This, of course, is all coming from a Wikipedia article, which I'll link to under this video. Bernard Bailyn states, the fact that the ministerial conspiracy against liberty had risen from corruption was of the utmost importance to the colonists. And it's of utmost importance to me and other people who are now being called ultra-leftists or far leftists. In 1768 to 1773, newspaper exposés, such as John Dickinson's series of Letters from a Farmer in Pennsylvania, were widely reprinted and spread American disgust with British corruption. Well, I'm here to say that there is still American disgust with British corruption. And the British corruption is what I've been fighting against in the Facebook group, and it's why I got kicked out of it. And the more pointed and difficult to dodge criticisms I've leveled in there, the more I've seen this corruption coming to the front. It prompted me to write an article about it called, "What Sort of Liberal Are You?" So I linked in this article, I also linked to the Facebook group. I really do hope that some less corrupt people start having discussions in that group because it's very one sided right now. So when I'm talking about solutions to the problem of income inequality in particular, and what sorts of politicians, values, and tactics should be employed to address this problem, I've noticed that when my ideas are opposed, I'm often branded as someone from the far left, especially when I point out that centrists, in air quotes, aka neoliberals, have purposely hidden under the cover of incrementalism and lesser evilism. In many previous articles, and the link is here, I've pointed out that neoliberalism is a more pressing evil than conservatism. Conservatism, yeah, I said it right. When it comes to the future likelihood of unbridled world dominance by transnational corporations. I won't rehash those arguments here, but what I will say is that there are more so-called liberals than I previously thought who are not necessarily being duped by the corporate-sponsored media and other thought leaders of our times into believing that neoliberal reliance on free markets, and we've never had actual free markets, will benefit everyone whom they believe to be deserving of a decent lifestyle. Deserving. So it's a veiled kind of bigotry here, and not even veiled. They believe that the market system will benefit everyone whom they believe to be deserving of a decent lifestyle. Instead, these capitalistic thinkers are active and unwilling participants in the charade being foisted by neoliberal thought leaders. I keep quoting that. That's from another article I've written that shows how talent agencies in California are connected to all of these news anchors and the Clinton machine. So feel free to click on that. And they vehemently guard their way of life from anyone who challenges it, especially from those who come at them from their left. I hate to say I told you so, but the predictions I made in this article, I linked to it here, are coming true. The Clinton machine has clearly swung support over from Biden to Warren, and Warren absolutely is aware of this, as evidenced by her recent meetings with Hillary Clinton and other clues being sleuthed by alternative leftist commentators such as Jimmy Dore, Tim Black, and Crystal Ball. The type of liberals, so-called centrists and moderates, who actively tout capitalism I've been arguing with from the UK are aware of this swing and are actively supporting Warren, something that would not have happened even 6 months ago. From the Wikipedia article on liberalism, a different article, continental European liberalism is divided between moderates and progressives, with the moderates tending to elitism and the progressives supporting the universalization of fundamental institutions such as universal suffrage, universal education, and the expansion of property rights. Over time, the moderates displaced the progressives as the main guardians of continental European liberalism. And that is based on my anecdotal experiences in this Facebook group. That is very true. In my view, this moderate strain of liberalism is like poison sumac. It seeks to climb up and circle and overwhelm the healthy sort of egalitarian democratic liberalism of FDR and choke it with a stealthy, corporate-approved Koch brothers strain. More continental liberals are now aware of how the game is evolving than US liberals, and thus tend to be more organized than US liberals when it comes to opposing the grubby populism of someone like Bernie Sanders and to attempt to tactically substitute someone like Warren. Do these continental liberals actually like Elizabeth Warren? Not at all. What they hope is that the truly progressive 25% of the left will accept Warren as a substitute for a true progressive candidate such as Bernie Sanders. The primary reason for pushing so hard to make this substitution stick is that Sanders intends to dismantle corporate control, whereas Warren hopes to, with the full and willing cooperation of the robber barons, to rein it in. Liberals in the United States are a few steps behind the continental liberals from a tactical standpoint. When they are confronted with a well-supported explanation of the recent shift of corporate political pundits and politicians towards Warren, many in good faith will decry the manipulations of the Clinton machinery and thus reject Warren. The few who are keeping up with the times, however, will continue to speak out in support of Warren, even when faced with her blatant corruption in the form of corporate donors and influence, U.S. imperialism, and lack of true progressive intentions. These corporate liberals will use predictable tactics when attempting to discredit grubby populists such as Bernie Sanders and his supporters. Number one, they will relentlessly insist that alternative news sources are suspect. Number two, they will insist that bashing corporate Democrats is off limits and even anti-intellectual. How dare we bash the most intelligent and competent political voices of our times? Number three, they will refuse to face the fact that the Clinton-Obama-Biden legacy is substantially the same as the Nixon-Reagan-Bush legacy when it comes to meeting the needs of working-class people. They will point out how they support abortion and are against gun control and expect to get a pass on the acceptance of the general rape and pillage foisted by transnational corporations, central bankers, and hedge fund managers. Number four, they will insist on party unity in order to defeat the menace from the right, even though they can't possibly make the case, at least from an economic perspective, that any of the world's liberal parties are worthy of support, especially by those who exited stage left decades ago. There is no possibility of good faith discussions with neoliberals. I hold the same contempt for them as I do for other types of elitist bigots. We must put on our gloves and long-sleeve shirts and begin the painful process of removing this poisonous strain of liberalism before it destroys us and our planet. Keep on burning.